All right, I'm working on a new program for creating these lab lectures for you, so be a little bit patient. This week's lab is about the anatomy of the eye and the anatomy of the ear. Um, these two URLs that you see on this slide, these two URLs, they are just about how humans see. And I think it's really interesting. We don't see the way we think we see. The first one talks about how human vision actually is like a little snapshot, one at a time, and then your brain puts those pictures together. And the second one talks about how, in a very real sense, mathematically, our sense of vision shouldn't be able to do what it does. So that's kind of interesting. So let's look at the anatomy of the human eye. I talked about this in lecture briefly, so this should be a review for you. First of all, when you look at it from the outside, you will see that there is a part of the eye that appears white, and that part of the eye is called the sclera. The sclera is actually a really tough connective tissue, and it forms almost the entire eyeball. The only part of the eyeball that is not covered with sclera is the clear glassy part that's right on the front, which is known as the cornea. We'll get to that in a second. Now, on the surface of the white part of the eye, you see these delicate blood vessels. Those, let me find a pen. Nope, let me find a laser pointer, okay? These delicate blood vessels right here, those delicate blood vessels, those are actually in a very thin uh, film of tissue that is called the conjunctiva or conjunctiva. Um, if your eyes are red, it's because the blood vessels inside of the conjunctiva have gotten larger and there's more blood going through them. This pigmented part of the eye that's shown here as blue, but could be green, could be brown, this is the part that is known as the iris. The iris is not just to give your eye color. The iris is there to control the amount of light that gets to the back of the eye. The iris controls the amount of light that gets to the back of your eye by opening and closing the hole in the center, which is known as the pupil. So write this down. The iris is responsible for controlling the amount of light that is going to reach your rods and cones that are found way at the back of your eye. The cornea. The cornea, do you see how light is bouncing off of this glassy part here? That is because it's bouncing off the cornea. The cornea is anterior to the iris, and it's where you would actually place a contact lens if you were wearing contact lenses. Where's the retina? To find the retina, we would have to look through that hole and go all the way to the back of the eye, and then we would find the retina. Let's look at the eye from the side. Here at the front of the eye, we have got the cornea, and light would first pass through the cornea, and then it would pass through this area here, which is called aqueous humor. Aqueous humor is a watery fluid, completely clear, that occupies the space between the cornea and the iris. The iris is the colored part of the eye. Again, here they show it as blue. And the hole in the center of the eye, that is the pupil. I'm going to switch to the pen right now. That is the pupil. The pupil is the hole right here in the center, right? And the iris, the way it controls how much light will reach the back of the eye, will reach the retina, the way it controls how much light will reach the retina is by opening and closing the pupil, right? Now, this structure right here, I'm going to outline it, is known as the lens. This is really important. The lens is what focuses the light on the back of your eye. Light has to be focused differently, whether it's coming from something close up, like a book, or something far away, like the clouds. And the focusing of that light is done as light goes through the lens. The shape of the lens gets changed by these structures here, and these structures here are ciliary muscles. The ciliary muscles are part of the ciliary body. The ciliary muscles are attached to the, do we have an eraser here? Ah, we do, okay. The ciliary muscles are attached to the lens by these little structures. Pick the color. By these little structures, the suspensory ligaments. These guys, those are suspensory ligaments. Oh, we've got them up here. Suspensory ligaments. The suspensory, oops, that was messy. The suspensory ligaments are going to connect the ciliary muscle to the lens. And strangely, when the ciliary muscles contract, they relax tension on the lens and allow it to get fat. And when the ciliary muscles relax, they put more tension on the lens and they cause it to flatten out. All right, let's go to the next slide. Why do we have a blind spot? We'll get to that. So the fibrous tunic are going to be the outside parts of the eye, which are the sclera and the cornea. The sclera is the white part of your eye, sometimes covered with conjunctiva. The cornea is the completely clear glass piece in the front of your eye, and that is our fibrous tunic. The vascular tunic. The vascular tunic is the muscles and such of the eye. And the vascular tunic includes the choroid. The choroid. The choroid is a layer between the sclera and the retina, right? So this layer right here in the middle, this layer right here, that is the choroid. And the choroid brings all of the important blood vessels to the retina. Retina's got lots of very active nerve cells and they need a lot of blood. The ciliary muscle is also part of the vascular tunic. And then we've got the sensory tunic. And the sensory tunic, these are going to be all of the parts of the eye that have got nerve cells, not just regular nerve cells, but also the highly modified photoreceptor cells called rods and cones. If I ask you, where will I find rods and cones? I find them in the retina. And what is the fovea? The fovea is one part of the retina, the part of the retina where humans do most of our seeing. And it's part of our retina that has almost nothing but cones in it, and they're connected to each other in a very important way that allows us to really see in incredible detail. Even if your dog knew how to read, your dog couldn't read the fine print because his eyes don't know how to do that. What else do you need to see? I want you to remember that this is the optic nerve. The beginning of the optic nerve has got its own name. It's called the optic disc, right? Now, light is going to be coming in through the eye. And as it goes through the eye, it is going to pass through first the cornea, then the aqueous humor, then it goes through the pupil, then it travels through the lens. After the lens, it travels through the vitreous humor, and then it is going to land at the retina. From the retina, it'll travel up and across the surface of the retina, and then it'll go through the optic disc and down the optic nerve, and that is going to be the path that light takes. Remember to try out your scotoma or blind spot. I did a good description of the scotoma or blind spot in our lectures, so please refer to those for more detail on how to do this. And you've got a blind spot in each eye because of this structure, which is known as the optic disc. Right? Accommodation. Accommodation is the process by which your eye focuses light. It's really interesting. kind of complex how you could be 1 second looking far away, and then you can bring your attention near, and your light focuses the eyes. One thing to remember, that when the ciliary muscles contract, where's my pen? When the ciliary muscles contract, that is when they uh, loosen tension on the lens and allow the lens to get really fat. And when they loosen tension on the lens and allow the lens to get fat, now we can see stuff that is very close. And that is why when you first start doing lots of reading of books, your eyes get tired because the ciliary muscles have to contract to allow your eyes to focus on something nearby. When the ciliary muscles relax, they tug on the lens, and that tugging on the lens flattens out the lens. And we see that in part B down here. And that flattening out of the lens lets you see far away.